Lystra, or Zardula it is called today, is located about 18 miles south of Iconium in today's Turkey. It was a fortified town, which made it helpful for the ruling Romans in protecting the region of Laconia. In the time of Paul, it was a center of education and enlightenment. The local aristocracy was made up of the Roman soldiers, along with Hellenistic Greeks, educated Jews, and the native Lycaonians. Latin and Greek were the language of the elite, while the lower classes of people spoke in the vernacular of Lyconium. Not much is known of her early history or of what happened in later times. However, during Paul's time, it was significant enough to build a Roman road through it, from Iconium all the way to Cilicia. This beautiful site is known as the Mound of Lystra. 2 rivers ran nearby, making it a very fertile agricultural area. Lystra was situated on a small hill that rose quickly from a relatively flat area, overlooking the surrounding plain. Honestly, I added this slide just because it is so pretty. It makes me feel peaceful looking at it. Lystra and surrounding land is a major agricultural area. This slide shows a man sowing seed in the same way his ancient ancestors did. Quote, "If we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much to ask if we reap a material harvest from you?" 2 Corinthians 9:10. This image of a temple at Lystra is indicative of the culture in the city. Those who ruled were Roman, therefore on top of the social ladder. There were also a large group of Hellenistic Greeks and educated Jews. Latin and Greek were spoken by these people, while the uneducated classes spoke the local vernacular, Lycaoian. The Greeks naturally worshipped the gods of Mount Olympus. Zeus and Hermes were very popular, as there was a legend that featured them as guests at one time. According to the legend, 2 men came into Lystra seeking shelter. They went from house to house and were rebuffed at each door. When they knocked on the door of 2 old men, Bacchus and Philemon, they were admitted and offered hospitality, which was followed by a great surprise. When Paul and Barnabas first came to Lystra, it was believed they were Zeus and Hermes come to visit again. The townspeople began worshiping them and bringing sacrifices to them. Acts 14:4-12, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas was called Zeus and Paul was Hermes because he was the chief speaker. Paul started ripping his clothing and yelling, "No, no, we are men. We are just like you." They did end up making converts in Lystra before continuing on their journey. An interesting trip for them. When Paul and Barnabas returned to Lystra, it was after being run out of Iconium. Their preaching had been upsetting to many mainstream Jews. Upon their arrival, they saw a man, lame from birth. Paul told him, "Stand up on your feet," which he did. Acts 14:10 and 11. As the people began worshiping them, the apostles denied being gods and continued to preach the gospel. Outsiders from Iconium came to town to enrage the locals about Paul and Barnabas. Paul was stoned, dragged out of the city, and left for dead. Several disciples gathered around Paul. He got up, returned to the city, and began preaching again. Acts 14:11 and 12. They left the next morning. On Paul's second mission, he again went to Lystra with Silas as his companion. There they met a young man named Timothy. Timothy's mother and grandmother were Jewish, his father Greek. Timothy was a believer, and he wanted to join Paul and Silas on their journey. To appease the Jews, Paul circumcised Timothy, who then became Paul's protege and like a son to him. 2 of Paul's letters were written to Timothy as he helped spread the good news. Timothy was the first second-generation Christian. It is hard to believe how these people lived. Can you imagine carving a hole in the stone and making a life in it? I guess the ancient Lyconians were really cavemen. It is also possible that these caves were burial tombs. Paul once again went to the city, but his focus now was not on converting the Jews, but on finding a way to reach the Gentiles. He was obviously successful on all these journeys as Christianity, or the Way, continued to spread throughout the region. If you look at the map of Paul's journeys, it seems that Paul visited Lystra 4 times. The name Lystra is written 5 times in the New Testament.